Welcome back. A spending agreement reached ahead of Friday's budget deadline to avoid a government shutdown. The new continuing resolution would fund government until March and would be the third continuing resolution used to fund government since September. Republicans have been pushing for any agreement to include new security at the southern border. But this CR does not appear to address that, despite over 785,000 migrants encountered at the southern border already this fiscal year, which began in October. That includes a new monthly record of 302,000 just last month. Now, Mexico's president is making a list of demands to the Biden administration for any of his help in slowing the tide of the millions of illegal border crossings from more than 150 countries. It is unclear how much control the dangerous drug cartels have on the Mexican government. Joining me right now with reaction is Utah Senator Mike Lee. He has vowed to vote against any funding agreement until a border security deal is in place. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you very much.
So can you walk us through these two spending packages that have been discussed this weekend?
The first one is the continuing resolution that would take us into March, keep the government funded. Look, we have in place a massive humanitarian border security crisis, and it's a rule of law crisis. In order to resolve that, all we need is for the President of the United States to exercise the authority that he already has. And he's got more than enough authority, the same authority President Trump had in order to secure the border, and he did. President Biden could do that, and he should do that. This has reached such crisis proportions, which with 300,000 crossing illegally across our southern border in December alone, that I think it's time for us to tell the government, look, you've got to secure the border or shut it down. So if they want their government funded, especially if they want every priority funded, even for a short period of time, they need to show us that they're willing to do this. We don't need new laws for this. We simply need the president to have the resolve. And if what that takes is the threat of us withholding some of his priorities or funding from his administration, so be it.
Well, I mean, part of the details that I was looking at from the Senate bill that they are proposing, expulsion authority for a limited number of days only if border encounters exceed 5,000 a day over a 7-day period. So are you suggesting that this deal is telling your colleagues that the only way they will put security at the border is after 5,000 illegals are enter a day?
Well, that's one way of looking at it. We still don't have bill text. That's how it's been explained to us in certain terms, in that they create a new authority for the president to, halt the flow of illegal aliens across the border. But that would kick in only after they've had 5,000 plus migrant encounters daily. But here again, Maria, this isn't necessary. The president doesn't need a new law. Existing law would allow him to address this. He just refuses to do it. And so that's why it's so disconcerting that they're saying a new law is necessary. Moreover, Maria, even after that authority, that new authority they create kicks in, only after 5,000 migrant encounters a day, it would remain in effect only for a maximum of 180 days a year after the first few years. I think the first year is 275 days. What that means is that the Mexican drug cartels could then calendar their human trafficking. Keep in mind, they earn many, many billions of dollars a year off of Joe Biden's lax border enforcement policies. And they could just front-end load that or back-end load that, depending on what the calendar allowed. So this is a proposal that's designed first and foremost not to secure the border, but to extract and extort votes from Republicans for this $106 billion aid package, most of which goes to Ukraine, for which they're understandably reluctant to vote. That's disgraceful.
Well, I mean, the Senate Republicans seem more interested in sending money to Ukraine than actually securing the border. When are Senate Republicans going to get serious about the border?
Well, it's time to get serious about the border right now. And the way we do that is to tell the Biden administration, if you want your administration funded, secure the border or shut it down. The very worst thing we could do right now is give them more money for their priorities, for things like giving aid to help other countries secure their borders, while doing nothing that's actually going to change President Biden's will to enforce the law. That is his job. He took an oath to do that. He's failing badly when it comes to the border, and the consequences are catastrophic. It results in human trafficking, human sex trade. It's eroding lawlessness across our country. these things do have an effect, and it's harming Americans. It's harming people all over the Western Hemisphere.
Just extraordinary. What do the next few days look like? The Senate goes back on Tuesday, and Schumer had set up a procedural vote. You said you don't even have text of any of these spending plans. When do you expect to vote?
Okay, so we do expect a vote as early as Tuesday on the continuing resolution. But as far as the supplemental aid package, we were promised that we'd see text as early as this Wednesday of this last week. We're now promised that maybe we'll get to see text sometime this next week. In the meantime, we've got people pushing this deal as if it were already a proposal. We've got the Wall Street Journal coming out last Monday saying that any Republican who didn't support the supplemental aid package was just trying to score cheap political points at the expense of American national security. I don't know how they can say this when there is no deal. There is no proposal. We haven't even seen it.
Let me switch gears, ask you about your thoughts on Iowa. I see that you have endorsed President Trump. Tell us why.
I've endorsed President Trump. We've got two choices. This is a binary choice Americans face in November. They face a choice between lawlessness and the rule of law. They face a choice between secure neighborhoods and communities and absolute lawless mayhem. The American people need a return of Donald Trump. They need the return of someone who is willing to secure our border, who is willing to look out for American interests, not those of our adversaries, not those of foreign countries.
Do you get a sense that others will be endorsing Trump after Iowa? When are you expecting him to wrap up and lock up this nomination, if in fact that's what you expect?
As a de facto matter, Maria, he's going to have this wrapped up pretty quickly because I don't see any state coming up anytime soon where he's going to start losing. I think he's going to do really well in Iowa. I think he's going to do really well in almost every state after that. And so, yeah, I think he will become the de facto presumptive nominee very, very soon. And I welcome my colleagues in joining me in getting behind Donald Trump and his candidacy for 2024.
I don't understand why your colleagues on the left are so against America First. I don't understand why they would allow this wide open border where we've actually noted people who are on the terrorist watch list who've been encountered and the fentanyl killing so many, 100,000 Americans in the last year. Do you have a sense of why?
You know, it's very difficult to speak for the subjective mindset of someone else, but I can speculate. And some of the speculation I can offer, Maria, has to do with the fact that when you don't live on or near a border, when you don't live in or near a community where bad things happen, communities that are not gated, you might lose track. So Democratic office holders maybe are not spending as much time in these communities as they should. Perhaps they're not close enough to people who are being killed by inflation, who are being harmed by the ravaging effects of lawlessness and illegal immigration. But regardless, they have a supremely naive view of a world that says that we don't have to worry about our border. We do. That's what a country is. Yeah. And we'll lose our country's strength if we don't enforce our own laws, particularly those that protect our border.
All right, Senator, we'll be watching your work. Thanks very much for being here this morning. Senator Mike Lee this morning, exclusive.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.